I'd like to call July 2nd, 2019 City Council meeting with the City of Cannon Falls to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Bringold. Here. Duncan.
Here.
Gesme.
Here.
Lindell.
Here.
Mattson.
Here.
Montgomery.
Here.
And Mayor Altoff.
Here. You stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Bill and a second by Morris to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Before I go to the consent agenda, I think we're going to remove item D. Is that right?
Yep.
We're going to remove item D tonight.
Okay.
We'll bring that up again at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, the consent agenda items may be adopted under one motion as presented or may be removed for discussion and resolution as council business. For you in the audience and at home, I'll go through the consent agenda. Item A, just and correct claims for the accounting period ending June 26, 2019. Item B, approve a contract with CETA for professional services, project number 3 for the 3rd Street Bridge grant application. Item C, approve a contract with CETA for professional services, project number 4 for the Blandon Broadband Communities Grant Program. We remove item D. Item E, approve a pay grade adjustment for administrative assistant license and permit technician. And item F, hiring of an unscheduled part-time employee. Is there anything you'd like to pull down?
Shouldn't there be something in there about approving the minutes from the last meeting? Or not? Or doesn't it happen anymore?
No, it does still happen. Because of people that were out of the office, the minutes did not get to us in time so that we could get it on the agenda.
Okay.
So next time you'll probably have 2 sets of minutes.
Okay.
More than likely.
Sure.
But it'll be in the
Thank
next
you.
one. Yeah.
Thanks.
That's right, there's no minutes here. Okay, is there anything, we want to pull down any of this consent agenda? Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Both.
Motion by Bill and a second by Morris to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. That leads us to council business. The introduction and first reading of ordinance number 366, the mobile food unit, better known as food trucks. Dave.
Also known as food trucks, thank you. I'll go through some of the revisions and draw your attention to a couple of the provisions that I think we had agreement on 2 weeks ago, and also point out Jeff and Joe have provided some input too on the policing of the licensing, as has Roger Knutson looked at it as well. So we'll kind of like we did at the last meeting, just kind of go through one by one, but not all of them unless there's questions on any particular ones that you have. I've highlighted a couple in the draft that I sent you in yellow. Highlight a couple of the sections that represent some changes from our conversation at the last meeting. Section 121.03, the fee. The annual fee of $250 was, as we talked about at the last meeting, but then there was conversation with input from Tillian and some others about having the opportunity to have something less than an annual fee, perhaps a daily fee. And so we talked about a limited fee at a proposed rate of $25 per event or per license that we issue. That is different from the last meeting. We've added the $25 per day. And as Jeff requested, we will also issue, as we would for farmers market vendors, an actual license, whether it's a limited daily fee and license or an annual fee. We will issue a license that they will post then and have at their units. So that will comprise 121.03. Turning to the second page, 12106, duration of sales. There again, we've talked about an annual license, and then there's always been this 21-day provision. And that's not a statutory requirement, but we saw a lot of consistency between other ordinances because I think the emphasis is these truly need to be mobile units. They're not permanent structures. So a lot of other communities have used the 21-day limit. So if you've got an annual license, you're not going to be sitting in front of one location for 21 days of any given year. You're going to be moving around the community. And with what direction you provided to me 2 weeks ago for moving around the community, there is quite a geographic area that's still available for food trucks to locate in. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So I want to call your attention to that. 121.10 I didn't highlight, but this was a suggestion that Jeff and Joe made, and I have reviewed it with the city attorney. We agreed that we're going to have a separation in terms of where these trucks can park relative to existing streets and intersections and driveways. And we're adding in the second to the last sentence, no parking or sales shall take place on public streets or within public right-of-way within 60 feet of an intersection of two or more streets, nor within 30 feet of a driveway that accesses a public street. So we wanted to be clear that the separation is based on public streets, public right-of-ways, public use spaces. One question that Tillian raised to me, which I'm sure you're aware of in terms of the geographic location, is that funny little piece just west of their building. Mm-hmm. What is that? Is that a street? Is it a municipal parking lot? Is it public open? What is it? And relative to this particular provision and some of the other ones that might apply there, is Veterans Lane is a part of, it connects to a little triangular piece that sits right next to the building. But the little triangular piece that sits right next to the building is not technically part of Veterans Lane. It's an older remnant piece that the city bought, as I recall, maybe back in the 60s even. So it's not a street. Veterans Lane is publicly owned right-of-way. Between the two of them, the question was, well, is that a driveway coming onto Mill Street? And if it is, can a truck park next to Tillian Brewery on the west side? My interpretation has been that's not a driveway per se, but I think if there's going to be use of that publicly owned space by a food truck, we're going to have to be careful in terms of maintaining visibility by the truck. If the truck sits in that location, depending on the size, we're just going to have to make sure that there's adequate visibility because there is still some vehicular traffic that goes up and down Veterans Lane. So we've tried to clarify a little bit in the ordinance with some of this language and also with Tillian that that space could in fact be licensed for a location of a food truck or a mobile food unit here.
I think that would be problematic because of the intersection of Veterans Lane and Mill Street, because it would fall within the right-of-way component. I think if we're going to, well, it probably technically would be. I don't know what the right-of-way off of Veterans Lane is, but our typical right-of-ways run about 30 feet off of center. So that's a unique situation because the road. It is a unique situation.
Yeah.
There.
I agree.
But I think that if we are looking for a solution there, we should look for a solution as opposed to trying to make something fit. So if we do get a challenge from somebody, another business, someone who's unhappy, whatever, we have a solid footing to be on, would be my recommendation to council.
Right, and/or if there's going to be a food truck license there, which we don't know if there is or there isn't, but if there is, we could also have traffic control at that location. But I don't think it's going to be a visibility issue because, again, if you look at that spot, a truck's going to be placed back in on this remnant piece of publicly owned property, not in Veterans Lane itself.
Right.
If it's in Veterans Lane itself,
Right.
then there's no traffic flow anyway.
And again, if we want to include, the language is very simple, which would be within the permitted, including, city-owned property.
Right.
And then if you want to have the component for that, you would look at some sort of waiver for within the 60 and 30 that would not obstruct traffic or something where a waiver could be considered an approval of council.
Well,
Might be a
isn't-
better approach.
It says here it must be located on a paved surface. That particular piece of land
It is paved,
Is it?
kind of.
Well, it's,
Well,
The
yeah.
majority of it is.
well,
So there's
Sort
parts of
of.
that triangle that are not. I mean, and we also, do they have a long-term lease for their chiller, or would we sell
Just,
them that?
just the chiller.
So, I mean, they've got a lease for part of that land for the use of their chiller, if I remember right.
Right.
Just while we're on that, does driveway include alley? So like on the east side of 4th Street by the bakery? Would that include that? Is a driveway also an alleyway? Are they the same? I don't know.
I would consider a driveway to be an access point off of any of our streets.
So would an alley,
So an alley would in essence be a driveway.
okay.
Right.
That was what I thought too, but,
The clarification there, would be putting into, this chapter 12-121.01, make that definitions, and then subset to that would be food truck, alleyway, what is meant? Alleyway
I
could
think
include an
that's really
alley
the only
or
one
a
downtown.
driveway, or a
That's-
driveway is
yeah.
only an access to a business or residence.
Right, okay.
To clearly define.
sure.
Right.
Just so it's clear.
And we can work on some definitional items here too, particularly for that piece, because that is an unusual piece next to Tillian. So,
would we add that for the second reading then?
yes.
Okay.
And then on 121.14 locations, quite a bit of language modifications here. In other ordinances that we looked at and the one that we talked about 2 weeks ago, oftentimes the locational, those areas that are permitted by location are tied back to zoning districts often. And we had a fairly broad discussion at the last meeting, opening up considerable parts of Cannon Falls being accessible for the use of food trucks. Here, to be clear, what we've defined is that the licensed food trucks are allowed in the downtown area, in the south commercial area, and in the residential business district, and the 2 industrial districts. So there's public use within the downtown and the commercial areas, and there's private use in the industrial area and the residential business district, which includes industrial land uses. So we've tried to differentiate between the public-private here, because there seemed to be some interest in that before about what if Lawrence Meats wants to have a food truck out in the industrial park on their own property. This ordinance will still allow food trucks to be located on private property. So we tend to regulate in this ordinance and the other ordinances we've seen, we tend to regulate a little bit more on public property than we do private property. But some of the things apply to both. So again, in this case, in that section, excluding the parking lot at the library, that the municipal parking lots, public streets within the downtown and within the south corridor are eligible locations for a request to place or locate a food truck. And within the industrial park, the I-1, I-2, the north end of the community, and this rather broad residential business district classification, there would also be the allowance of the private trucks. So we accommodate both and license both.
Makes sense.
That seemed to be the direction. Clarification needed on 121.16 city parks. City parks scattered throughout the community largely are not located within the downtown. We have parks in the downtown or the B2 or the industrial district. So if you want to have an allowance for a food truck in one of our residential neighborhoods next to a park, we talked about allowing it on the street or within the public right-of-way of the street and not necessarily in the parking lots. If it's okay to locate a food truck in a parking lot adjacent to a park, we'll need to clarify that and say that. So we'd be using what parks do have parking spaces, we would allow food trucks to occupy those if we wanted them to. Right now, they wouldn't be. They'd be limited to the street. So that's kind of your choice that we need some input.
What about John Birch Park?
The
You've got,
question I didn't delineate in here that I had, Dave, on that was, I didn't have the zoning map in front of me.
Right.
So I couldn't tell which parks
Right.
would fall into prohibited zones or not. I assume, like, say, Trollhaven would be a residential.
Right.
So that would not be a permitted area.
well.
But I didn't know which ones,
Right.
and so I was hoping we could, get some
And
clarification on
that's
that.
clarification we need, because right now, parks, as a separate provision here, will allow food trucks in any one of the parks irregardless of zone. That's where we get into this little bit of a land use tussle.
Because I could really see, for example, on a busy weekend, a food truck wanting to be in Riverside Park. I can really see that.
Well,
Hannah's Bend.
And I'm also worried,
Yeah.
like you say, about John Birch Park, because the people that run the concessions for the different groups, that's how they make
Yeah,
their money for their little organization.
I wondered about that one, and I wondered about the municipal pool, because, the city operates a snack component out of that, if you wanted to have competition for that or not. If you did want to have it within parks, my recommendation, after hearing this discussion, would be to actually add parks into your 121.14 locations, listing parks or excluding.
Well, I was going to say
Parks.
exclude John Birch.
well, but you wouldn't have to exclude it if they didn't have concessions running. Not every organization has it, but if they're running concessions, I would say yes. But
Right, but
Maybe-
just about everything.
Well, just about every,
runs-
but you're gonna
I don't know of one that doesn't.
I don't know.
So then,
I don't
you've
know.
got a restriction within 121.18. You may want to look at extending that exemption, that distance exemption, to include concessions operated by, Cannon Falls. I can't remember. Previously, we cited somewhere in here.
That's earlier in the ordinance
Yeah.
where the nonprofits are exempt.
Yeah, so, and, they wouldn't be able to operate and compete against a, organization identified in 121.2A.
So that would cover that.
So that would keep them away from those locations regardless of where they are
Right.
within the city.
I think that makes sense. Yeah. I think that makes sense.
So it's kind of a broader policy decision or discussion on parks or not. And if parks, including the parking lot component of a park, or excluding parking lots that adjoin parks. So we got to figure that out, get some direction on that so we can be clear on where we really want to allow them. Because right now, again, the locations have been really targeted for commercial business areas, with the exemption allowed for nonprofits on community festivals and other approved events, no matter where they are. But we need to clarify the park
Yeah.
one, because they're all over town.
Yeah.
The ones that I see most likely to come into play might be John Birch, Lower Hannah's Bend, East Side,
Riverside?
Riverside.
Yeah.
Yeah, those would be the ones that I would see where those might be places that they would want to locate a food truck.
Yeah. They're not gonna- they're not
Number
gonna
one
do
is that
many
those are our busier parks.
Yeah, right.
Two, some of them provide some really very spot-on traffic counts
Yeah.
that would maybe make them attractive.
I'm wondering if, like in the case of Riverside Park, if we could designate, like at that one end where there's that little pathway thing going down, if we could designate that as where the food truck would be, because there aren't parking spaces there anyway. If we could, when people get their permits, say, if you're going to locate in XYZ Park, this is where you can be. I don't know if that makes sense or not. So they wouldn't have to, I don't want them necessarily tearing up the grass, but like in Riverside Park, they could be at that end where there isn't parking, and then they wouldn't be taking up parking spaces.
they're gonna have to-
That has the no parking sign, that's got it.
Right.
Yeah, they're essentially going to have to be on a paved surface anyway,
Right.
as provided
Yeah.
earlier within
But then
the,
they wouldn't be taking up parking spaces if we said this is where you can be.
Yeah.
Each one, I don't know. If that makes sense or not.
So I mean, I think the larger question is for council that can help shape, staff's recommendations is, do you want to permit them within the parks or not? If you don't want them within the parks, then that's easy to address from a staff perspective. If you want them prohibited from competing against, civic groups, that type of thing, then we should delineate that out in the distance component as well. And, then how you want to handle them as far as parks.
Well, I could see something like an ice cream truck coming to East Side or Hannah's Bend. It's safer for them to be able to be in the parking lot instead of just pulling up and having kids running around. So that I'm more inclusive that way.
That's a broader thing, is that you can't think of these just in the terms of, a full-service food ribs truck or something like that. It could be,
Ice cream truck.
a specialty ice cream sales or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to see them in the parks if
Yeah,
possible.
yeah.
It's
And in
better
the
than
case
having them
of-
on the busy road.
Absolutely. And in the case of like East Side Park, they could go, assuming that they're vending out of the right side, they could be along Minnesota Street really easily.
Maybe what we can try to do is move 12116 Parks back up into the 114 section and just come up with some language that gives some guidance or some allowance for food trucks operating within or adjacent to city parks. And maybe we'll even list all of them.
Okay.
Okay.
If that might
Yeah.
help. Okay.
And then with that, did you want to look at bringing some language of 12102A over into 12118 with the distance restrictions?
Yeah, and we need to talk about 18. I mean, there's some questions revolving around the 200 feet for Tillian and others. So maybe let's get some input on that and then see where you want us to head with that. I did talk with Tillian again after our last meeting. They have seen this. They are arguably, or our property west of the building is within 200 feet of Mill Street Tavern.
So how loose are we with similar food establishments? And when I say that, like we said, if it's
That's the question that I have, is there, are we talking identical items? Are we talking one item on the same, matches within their menu?
Right.
Same and similar
tacos
is
and Thai,
very
Yeah,
broad.
yeah.
And I hate when we have overly broad.
Yeah, the similar is particularly problematic. Same is a little bit easier to define. Roger Knutson's sense is if you prefer not to state anything, don't state anything with similar or same. But I know, and I haven't heard from any other restaurant operators, and I'm sure we'll hear some more between tonight and the next time that the council looks at this. But the 200 feet particularly is an issue for Tillian, and at least from their vantage point, it kind of removes most rights for food truck on that location. The 200 feet that we talked about 2 weeks ago, we talked 300, 400, 500, and the council brought us all back into a closer distance. There's nothing statutorily that says 200 is a magic number, 300, 100. You don't have to have it at all. But the reason that it's in there is because I think we've probably all heard from some of the local restaurant operators saying, hey, what about us? And this is the only provision, and it's not perfect, far from perfect, the only provision, the only standard that we saw that began to regulate a little bit of, or impact a little bit of the local market by separation of distance. Is it perfect?
Right.
No. Is it easily defined? Distance is, but not the foods. So that's really kind of your choice too on how strongly you feel about that.
Well, because really, a pizza place could open right next door to Dudley's, a brick and mortar one. We don't have any regulation on that either. So it's kind of hard to say. A lot of that's in the eye of the beholder.
Well, I mean, you have two restaurant, bars right across from each other on,
That's what I was
Street.
thinking last time, that's measured
so
between
that's,
those two front doors.
70-foot separation, 80-foot separation maybe.
Right.
And we really, quite frankly, didn't see any other quote-unquote better ways to kind of reflect local market conditions than this kind of provision.
You kind of wonder if the food truck will kind of self-select that out and not want to be right next to the place that's like them, but I don't know. Maybe we wait to see if it's a problem. If it becomes a problem, I don't know.
Well, if you want to clear up the ambiguity of the similar or same, that can be removed. But then the 200 feet still sits, and it still causes an issue with our property. But
Yeah.
that would clarify, or at least take care of the question of what's similar, what's the same, because there's no statutory reason that has to be in there.
Right?
Yeah. 100 feet, take the similar out?
Yeah,
I was just gonna say
yeah,
that too.
yeah.
Because obviously we don't want a pizza truck parking right in front of Dudley's, we get that.
Right.
But to allow Tillian and possibly the winery, if they, 200 feet makes it so that it's 100 feet, they're not right in front, they're not direct competition. Take the similar out, sell what they sell.
You feel strongly about similar alone or similar and same? If you're going to go to 100 feet,
Oh.
that's arguably probably far enough. It's certainly far enough from Mill Street, at least in this instance. And then you remove the question about is it similar, is it the same? Because we don't have to have either one if you don't want
I think we should just take them out.
Take them both out?
I think take
go
them
to
both
100
out.
feet?
So many places
Make it a
have, I mean,
distance,
they could
and then they
add something to
can
their
be what they
menu.
want to be and
Yeah,
have at it.
The market
Yeah.
will adjust itself.
the market decide.
I was hoping a couple of the local restaurants would be here tonight. Chris said he was going to be here, but he didn't show up, so.
I haven't heard anything.
Might be in fire training, I think, down there tonight.
Okay.
With that change, one thing that I would then maybe suggest would be just adding behind food, just service, so it'd be food service establishment. The reason is that later within that same sentence, you reference the food service building.
Well, I think those are the highlights of at least some of the comments that we received 2 weeks ago, and as we narrowed it down. What we can do is we can work on some definitions, work on this park issue, and work towards a revised ordinance that can be brought back in 2 weeks then.
Motion to make the changes and proceed to the next reading?
Yeah.
Need a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Mary Jo, a second by Matt to proceed with corrections and bring it up at the next meeting. In discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, reports. Personnel Committee. Dave or Morris? Bill?
I think we covered at least the 2 items that were discussed on the agenda today, so one item was moved forward and the other item will come back.
Okay,
Is that a deep enough report?
Yep.
Yeah.
it's got her. Okay, we'll go around. Chief, you got anything tonight?
We're in the middle of the fair. I hope as many people as can come out. Hope the weather cooperates. Tonight's events have been shifted to Friday. We'll see how the pit conditions are, and the fair builder will make a decision regarding tomorrow night's events. Parade on Thursday morning. Weather looks like it may be drizzly. I'm hoping it's not thunderstorms, like sunshine. So everybody, please come out and attend the parade. That's all I got.
Linnell?
I was just going to report that last week I was able to attend the League of Minnesota Cities Conference in Duluth, along with Councilmember Montgomery. They had some really good speakers, keynote speakers, and some educational events, and I would highly encourage the council to take advantage of that. And Matt can speak more to this if he'd like, but take advantage of those trainings because the league really does put on a good program and beneficial. So thank you for allowing me to attend.
Dave?
Two quick things. Planning Commission will not be meeting next Monday night. Nothing on the agenda pending for them at this time, so they will not be meeting Monday night. And just for council and public information, I'm continuing a dialogue with Sustain and the Holdens as a follow-up to the presentations that they made to the council, working cooperatively with them on several issues or several items, including to trying to work towards a better coordination of handling and responding to complaints between the city, Sustain, and the city. And they seem to be very willing to continue to cooperate with us on those efforts. We're trying to clean up some of our operating procedures between the two of us so that we're both on the same page all the time, so that to the extent that there are future complaints registered either to the city, which they do come to the city at times, or directly to them, that they hear from us and we hear from them, and we're able to kind of monitor that together as we go forward. Also working a little bit more specifically with them to learn more about the efforts that they have made, many of which they've discussed with the council and with the public, but I've impressed upon them that it's really important that we continue to communicate and become aware of and know more specifically about what it is that they're doing, when they're doing it, how they're doing it, and if there's anything that we can do to help them help themselves. And they've been opening up and expressing more and more willingness to talk and communicate. They don't want this problem to continue either. They've made that pretty clear to you, and obviously they're making it clear to me. So we'll keep after that, and I think we're making progress, and I'm guessing probably in the next month or so, I should be able to give a little more specific, report to the council on what we're actually doing to address those concerns. But so far, so good.
Very good. Steve?
Well, I was hoping Greg Anderson or Mike would have been here, but I got a call from an East Side resident and about the new sod, and that the company that was supposed to water was responsible for 30 days. Somebody help me. And I was told that they only did one pass total. So I was going to ask Greg about that, but I might have to email him to see if that's true. And so the resident was saying that he was using more water than he should have been. He said they went by one time and then it froze. Does that sound right? Don't look at me like that. Okay, well, I'm going to try to get in touch with Dave, or with Greg.
I know that it was fairly late in the season when they did put the sod down. I just don't recall when the freeze and stuff occurred.
Yeah, okay. But I'll, hopefully I can talk to Greg some more about that, get an answer for him anyway. That's all I got.
Matt?
A few quick things. Today was the bike to the fair, and I got to do that with my kids. It was wonderful. Obviously hoping to see more bikers use the trails and have their helmets on and wear these buttons and make their way to the fair. The other thing, I want to thank Mary Jill and Chuck. We had our park board, we got together a couple weeks ago on a Saturday morning, had some donuts and just walked the parks, and just a fresh set of eyes to look at them, walk them. And we were really pleased to see how clean and well-maintained they had been. We thought it was going to be kind of a pick up trash and litter and just clean things up. We didn't have to do hardly anything. The parks are in phenomenal shape this summer, and they look really good. And that was a great morning. And like Linnell said, the League of Minnesota Cities event this last week in Duluth, it was great. Governor Walz came up and spoke. The education sessions, those conferences, the one that I sat next to you, talking about small town, I just want to share this. More than 50% of people when they're polled say that they want to live in a small town, but only 19% of the population do. And the things that they list that they look for is pace of life, safety and security, and lower housing costs. When I think of those things, I think that Cannon Falls, for a bigger small town, because we got to remember we're in like the 70th or 71st percentile. We're not super small. We're more than 4,000, so we're on the bigger side of small. We offer those things compared to a lot of small towns. And it was just great to talk to people at some of the tables that we were at, some of the different topics. there's a lot of problems that some small towns face, and we don't face those same ones. So I think we're doing a good job in that respect. So thank you to the city for allowing me to go to that. And I would suggest, if you can, next year is going to be in St. Paul, so we won't have to go stay at hotels. We can commute and go and enjoy the day and come right back. But the League of Minnesota Cities does a great job. So thank you.
Bill?
Just want to wish everybody a happy 4th, and that's all I have.
Derek?
Nothing for me today.
Mary Jo?
No, nothing.
I just wanted to mention, we might be getting another 10,000 from the library board for the house payment. I was told that tonight, so that should be forthcoming. Budget session, we want to plan to meet after our regular council meeting on the 16th and start that process. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the fair, but we're going to open public input. Citizens may speak to issues not on the agenda. Before speaking, please give your name and address for the record and kindly limit your comments to 3 minutes. Public comments must be respectful, pertinent to city business, and adhere to the applicable data privacy rules. The city council will not take action on any issue raised by the public, but may choose to schedule consideration of the item on a future agenda.
Sorry I was a little late. Maybe I missed it. Has anybody spoke about Bill muttering in his mic last council meeting? Anybody bring that up?
No.
No? Well, it's a little disappointing, but I've been disappointed a lot lately. I'm trying to get through to you folks that we have some staff issues. Our city engineer is an issue, and it's dropped off your agenda, Bill. I called Mike today to see what was on the agenda, and nothing that I'm talking about is on there, and that is problems that we've had for years and years. Now, Robbie and Ron and Tom are gone. But they left us one hell of a mess, didn't they? What are we going to do about it? Ignore it? Well, that's what they always did. They ignored everything. We going to get it on the agenda, Bill? What do you say? You want to do your job? Do you want me here at every meeting hounding you? Being a pain in the ass, maybe. Well, at least you catch on to the obvious. We're going to ramp it up a little bit for you. We're just going to keep right on you till we get there, okay? We are going to talk about it. Our library has been a disaster. Nobody wants to be responsible for it. We got problems on the west side. Now we got problems on the east side. The east side's not cleaned up. The punch list isn't done. I talked to Mike. Why so long? Why do we drag our feet? We just leave everything lay, hoping it'll go away. Well, if you ignore it long enough, maybe it will, but I'm not going to. Now, about 3.5 years ago, Morris, hi. 3.5 years ago, I talked to you about the chief of police and the hours that he works. And nothing's ever been done about it. And John, I talked to you, it's been 7 months now. And Dave, since the day before you started to talk to the chief of police. We're supposed to have a police commission meeting in May, I'm told. That's what they talked about at the February meeting. It didn't happen. I talked to Todd Hansen. Was supposed to have been 2 weeks ago. It didn't happen. He doesn't return my calls. Seems to be a common theme around here. Nobody seems to want to address the issues. When are we going to? Anybody got a clue? Nobody got nothing to say. We're just going to keep kicking the can down the road, huh, John? Well, sooner or later, we're going to have to get to it. Now, tomorrow, I'm going to make a request at City Hall, and I want to know when the chief of police is working, has worked. And it's supposed to be a matter of public record, and it's not. And it needs to be. So I'm going to make the request, and I would expect an answer. In full. What hours, what days? Instead of us all giggling about it and laughing at how pathetic this is, why don't we do something about it? Yeah, you. Exactly you.
Okay, anybody else, public input? Third and last call, public input. Okay, before we adjourn, I just want to give a plug for the fair. On what Jeff was saying, we got a demolition tomorrow night, Thursday, the parade, harness racing in the afternoon, fireworks at 10 o'clock. And we've postponed our combine demo. It was supposed to be tonight, and that's going to be Friday, so we extended the fair one more day. So we'll have a midway and a combine derby on Friday. So we've had a little tough luck with the weather, so see y'all at the fair. Come out and support us. So anybody else got anything else? Take a motion to adjourn.
Motion. Second.
Matt and Bill. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.